Looks like it's going. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Super Celluloid Bros. Got it right this time.
That's good. I'm proud. How you doing, Henry?
Pretty good, Bretflix Mazurski.
It's hard to try to call you Henry.
Yeah, my online moniker, yeah.
Yeah, so no one knows who we really are.
Yes, God forbid.
Even though I've probably dropped your real name a million times, but who knows?
Yeah, I think it's out there for anybody who's been paying attention, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's all right if people dox us. It's not a big deal.
People what?
Dox us, put our personal info on the internet so people harass us.
Oh, okay. Yeah. There's a word for that. Okay.
Yep. I learned it sort of recently, so.
I think I just learned it this minute. So.
Yeah. But anyway, have you been the past week? I haven't talked to you in like a week.
Oh yeah. I've just been, working and watching movies and doing what I do, helping. Also, I'm helping a friend out shooting a feature film right now, which I'm kind of just doing various jobs on. I'm doing a little bit of camera work, a little bit of sound work, and I'm doing a little bit of acting too.
Ooh, how do you like being in front of a camera?
It's nerve-wracking, but the more I'm doing it, the more comfortable I'm getting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty tough. I mean, I've only been in front of like a camera, like with like the dorky little movies that we've made, but you become very aware of like all the things you're doing. Like I know one of the issues I've always had is like I need to act more natural. So by doing that, I kind of defeat the purpose. Like I'm not acting natural at all.
That's the toughest thing. Yeah. Is learning how to just be relaxed and not, I guess for me, at least, I'm hypercritical, especially when I'm, I guess, performing, because I'm not really comfortable performing. So yeah, the times I've been in front of the camera, I've been so like, I got to get my lines right. I got to do this. I got to do that. It's very hard to just relax and just, let something happen. You see why people have to train and really work at doing stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like that part from Talladega Nights when Will Ferrell's like, "What do I do with my hands?" I have that crisis every time I'm performing because I feel like I should be doing something to just come across as like a regular person, and it doesn't. I don't think it ever really works out. Like I have whenever I watch our old movies or. I have like DVDs of plays that I've been in, and I'm like, Brett, what are you doing? Like you're overacting, you're underacting right now. Like you just stop, just stay still,
just be in the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Like you have to be that character. I guess if you find yourself like thinking like, what should I be doing right now? Then that's not a good thing. Then you're probably not fully in character.
Yeah, most of the time, the best stuff happens when you're not even planning it. It just happens.
Yeah, a lot of the performances I am really proud of are the ones where like we were allowed to just cut loose and just be crazy and just say whatever we want. Where you really can't play it wrong. Like there is no wrong way to do it. I remember I was in a production of a Midsummer Night's Dream, and there's this whole section in the play where it's just like the four like lover characters are just getting at each other and yelling, and we're running around the stage, and every single night was those were always my favorite parts to play because there wasn't a wrong way to do it. Like one night I would just think like, you know what, I'm gonna scream this line, but instead of screaming it this way, I'm gonna scream it over at this person and wave my hands around a bunch like this and spin around or just do something weird. Like that was always so fun because then I wasn't thinking about each little detail of like, what am I doing with my hands, or should I be looking over here doing this, should I be more interested in what's going on? I'm just less aware of it. I'm just cutting loose.
Yeah, you've just got kind of a clear active thing to do. You're angry, express your anger.
Yeah, you just get to crank it to level 10. That's why like subtle performances impress me so much, because I'm like, I don't think I have the talent to do so little.
Yeah, that is a definite skill. Yeah, and it does seem to be only a few people can just be in front of a camera, just doing nothing, or thinking. You know, that's probably one of the toughest things, is to act a character who's just thinking and processing something, and you're just watching them quietly think about something. I think that'd be really tough to make interesting and compelling and dramatic. But the actors that do that, those are the ones that pull you into the movie the strongest, because it's like you're getting all this stuff from them, and it's like some kind of alchemy that's taking place. You know, you don't know how they're doing it, but it's getting across to you.
Yeah, I almost hate that. Like, that's my favorite way to act. When I mean, like, my favorite way to act is to be bombastic, because that's like my least favorite kind of acting to see. And I mean, few actors can really do it. Like Nicolas Cage can do it and always make it really awesome. But I know this is going to be a really strange thing to bring up right now, but Damien Chapa,
okay.
that's what he fully relies on. Like, every scene that he writes and stars in, like, it's him like on his knees going, wah, you know, stuff like that. And it's so bad.
Yeah. The point is to kind of be like, look at me act.
yeah. It's like, see how dramatic this is. But then
that was a deep pull too. I don't know. We might be the only two right now who know who Damien Chapa is.
Yeah. If you don't know who he is, like, watch one of his movies. You'll know what we're talking about. It is so gloriously terrible. But then compare that to, like, probably my favorite moment in The Phantom Thread, towards the end of the movie, when it's just Daniel Day-Lewis and I forget the actress's name, but when they're sitting at the table, when he, like, realizes what's been going on. I won't spoil anything, but
yes,
like, there's a long moment of silence where he's just like eating this omelet she had made for him, and he, like, got it. He didn't have to say he got it, but he's like looking through.
Oh,
he's looking
yeah.
at her. He's like, bitch. This is what. And that conveyed way more than any actor, you know, screaming his or her heart out.
Yeah, he's able to just play it all internal like that, and yeah, it's so much more effective.
Yeah, it's all in looks, you know. It's all in the silences. Like, I forgot who said it, but I read online, so it could have been anybody. But they said that, like, music is all in the moments in between the notes. It's not the notes themselves. It's like the silences between them. Otherwise, all music would kind of be a constant, like, you know, be like a constant note. But it's not. Like, what gives the melody is the silence. You know, what separates this note from this one. That's how you get guitar riffs and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, I guess I can understand that. And I think a lot is in acting. Like, you can convey a lot more with nothing. You know, sometimes less is definitely more.
Yeah, I think also too, it's definitely not exactly what you do, it's the way you do it, you know?
Yeah.
So, and that could be just where the confidence comes in, you know, where maybe somebody who is trying to yell and scream maybe just doesn't have enough confidence to say, like, you know, I can just be quiet in this scene and that's going to work. But they might think, like, no, I can't be quiet. Quiet's boring. I've got to be dramatic. I've got to bring drama to it. But, you know, again, like, being quiet isn't boring. It's how you be quiet, you know?
Yeah. And it's also how you be loud. Because, like I said, like,
oh, yeah.
Nicolas
true.
Cage is always great to see. Or, like, Michael Shannon. I love it when he screams. And that's the only reason why I was able to make it through Man of Steel, was because he screamed that entire movie. And he was fantastic. So, I guess I should be a bit more fair in that, like, both ends, you know, quiet, loud, they have their merits. It's how you apply it.
Yeah. I always feel that way about filmmaking too. I have conversations, you know, often where we'll talk about, or I'll be talking with somebody about a movie, and not all the time, but sometimes something will come up like, yeah, I don't know why they did this. Like, movies that do that are never good, or movies that are about this subject, or movies that, you know, utilize like this kind of storytelling technique, or whatever it is. You can bring anything up, like movies that follow, you know, a clear 3-act structure, or movies that have obvious character arcs, anything. It's like, yeah, that can be done poorly, but again, it's not what you do, it's how you do it, you know. Any technique can be used poorly or be used extremely well. It is, I think yeah, it's kind of like the style. It's what's between the notes, you know. It's kind of like the point of view and the attitude, you know, that you're bringing to it, or the emotion that you're bringing to it, the feeling, the passion.
That reminds me of something that Roger Ebert said. He said it's not what a movie is about, it's how it's about it.
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of movies like that are about, I mean, I don't know. Or like I mentioned, and I think it was in our first episode of this where I talked about, like, I don't like seeing kids die in movies. Like a lot of the time that's a thing. Like if a kid, like, I'm like, oh, okay, I hate this. But I've seen it done well. I mean, I've seen it done tastefully, you know, like
as tastefully as it can be done.
Right. Like in Human Centipede 2, I hated it. But the way like Von Trier portrayed it in Antichrist, like,
or okay. Hereditary, say.
Yeah, exactly. So it can happen.
Yeah. Perhaps I just gave away a major plot point of Hereditary, but we'll just gloss over that and move on. I did it. I said that without thinking, so I apologize to anybody who's never seen that movie.
Yeah, just forget anything that was just said. So yeah, it's how it's about it. I mean, the same thing with like ways I'll criticize directors like Michael Bay. Like, I don't like how he edits his films. I don't like how he shoots them, but I've seen other filmmakers do that kind of thing pretty well. Like, I hate how chaotic his camera shots are and how chaotic his editing is, but I've seen someone like Paul Greengrass do that a lot better. Like he has really like chaotic energy in all of his movies. Yet when I see his movies, I'm still able to understand what's happening. Like his story is still pretty clear. Whereas with Michael Bay, it's like, I don't know what's going on in his movies.
I think Tony Scott is another one.
He's probably the prime example.
Yeah, he's somebody that I think really effectively turned anarchy into a style, a distinct style.
Yeah, that I enjoy actually experiencing. But then when I get the Michael Bay touch, I'm kind of put out of it again. But I mean, even with that, like, I've seen Michael Bay do it better sometimes than in other times. Like, you know, I kind of like The Rock. That's kind of a fun movie, but I'm not a big fan of Transformers. But like, his style is pretty much the same thing.
It could be done well. Yeah, is the point. Yeah.
Yep.
It all just depends.
Right.
I can't. Do we do? I think we introduced the show, right?
I think we just kind of hit the ground running.
Okay, yeah.
You said the title. We said our name.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so yeah. The structure we basically got for the show that I'm enjoying so far is, we each kind of pick a movie, or we just go back and forth, you know, and maybe talk about 4 movies in total that we watched over the last week.
Usually like 2 each.
Yeah. So shall I kick it off? I did see something in theaters over the last week.
Did you finally see Isle of Dogs?
I didn't. I missed it.
Oh, what'd you see?
I didn't make it out for Isle of Dogs, and I believe that is now officially out of theaters in Portland. But I did go with the manager, the coffee shop where I work, who is a big Marvel fan. I did go with him to see Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Oh, yeah. How was it?
It was okay.
I remember last episode, I had the impression that, like, you were sort of excited to see it, or like you...
I actually was. Yeah, I was looking forward to it because I don't know what the last Marvel movie I saw was. It's been quite a while since I've watched one, and there's been a huge chunk of the Marvel Cinematic Universe that I've missed out on. I want to say last one I saw was probably like Iron Man 3, and even then I hadn't quite seen all of them up to that point, and I'm fairly certain Iron Man 3 was just kind of where I stopped. And then I know a bunch of Thor movies, a bunch of Avengers movies, Doctor Strange, Black Panther, and I think a couple Captain America, yeah, and a couple others. I think I actually did watch. I don't know when the first Ant-Man came out, but I think I actually did watch most of that at some point. I think with my dad. and I didn't really remember a lot of it. But luckily, this is the good thing about going to see a Marvel movie with a really big Marvel fan, is on the drive to the theater, he was actually explaining to me kind of like everything that had kind of like built up to this movie. So he's saying like, you saw the last films, right? It's like, no, I did not. So he's saying, like, okay. So here's what's going on with Ant-Man. Like in Captain America Civil War, I'm pretty sure is the one he said. Like, okay, Ant-Man was doing this, and the Avengers split up into two factions, and Captain America kind of like went rogue, and then Iron Man was kind of like working with the government, and Ant-Man was on Captain America's side, so now he's made like a plea bargain with the government, and he's kind of separate from the Avengers at this point. And so it's like, okay. Just trying to keep up with everything. Yeah. So going into the movie, I was kind of hoping to just go in and blind and see like what my reaction would be, like if I'd be able to follow everything. As it turns out, I'm kind of glad he gave me all that backstory, because it very much does pick up on a lot of plot threads that are set up in previous movies, or at least kind of starts in a place where like Ant-Man's in a place where a lot has already happened to him, and there's a lot of references to things that have taken place in other movies. Had I not known about any of that, I probably would have had no context whatsoever for kind of like where the movie starts, and yeah, what all of these illusions mean. Even when the movie began, it was a flashback like within the story itself, which really confused me because I thought it was going back to the first movie, but then I was like, wait a minute, this has Michelle Pfeiffer in it. I don't think she was in the first movie. So
nice.
Yeah, so
does she play Catwoman?
No, she doesn't. She plays like the original Wasp.
Okay.
Because like Michael Douglas is like the original Ant-Man, and Michelle Pfeiffer is the original Wasp in this one, kind of, I think.
All right.
But like I was actually really confused like in the opening, because before like the opening credits or like even the Marvel logo or anything, it just starts. And I was like, wait a minute, is this from the first movie? Is this from like this is from the Avengers, or is this like tying in with Age of Ultron? I couldn't tell what was happening for about 5 minutes until I realized it was just a flashback in the story itself. And then the actual story started. So there was kind of a lot that was unclear to me, just as somebody like jumping right back into the Marvel Cinematic Universe at this late stage. And I went into it with a lot of curiosity and hoping just to really enjoy it. And I wound up being like slightly disappointed, I'd say. I didn't have, huge expectations for it, but I think just the last few movies I'd seen that were kind of like the big summer blockbuster sorts of stuff, I had been very impressed by. Like the first one this year that I saw was Spielberg's Ready Player One, which I was a very big fan of. That movie was far better than I was expecting it to be. And then I saw Incredibles 2, which totally blew me away. Another one I just kind of went into not really expecting a lot, hoping I'd have a good time, but not really expecting, to be blown away in any sense. And I completely was, by how absorbed I got in the story, by how polished, the movie just was technically. And I was kind of hoping Ant-Man would be a similar experience, I'd been like kind of blowing off all the Marvel stuff for so long. It's kind of like, maybe this will turn me around. And it didn't really, it wasn't a terrible movie by any means, but it was just kind of one of those movies that just like, it does what it needs to do. There's nothing particularly special or spectacular about it. It's a fun enough film. But then when it's over, you kind of just forget about it for the most part,
Yeah, that's what I usually expect from like a Marvel movie. I mean, from in the MCU, it's been a lot of years since I've seen a movie that's in the MCU.
What was the last one you saw?
The last one I saw was the first Avengers movie.
Okay, so it was a while ago then.
Yeah, I did catch the last half of Doctor Strange.
Okay.
So I'm not gonna make any judgments on that movie, but the last one I saw was the first Avengers movie, and that's exactly how I felt about it. And that's just kind of when I was
just kind of like not awful, but just whatever.
Yeah, because my interest was already was already waning. And when I
Yeah.
saw that, I was like, okay, I'll save my money for other stuff. And
Yeah.
I've seen other comic book movies since then. Like I saw, but they're usually like the ones that Fox produced, like the Amazing Spider-Man movies, and I like those, and the X-Men stuff. But I'm always just thinking like that's the kind of reaction I'm going to have from a comic book movie. And it makes me feel like I'm at such a disconnect with with a lot of other people, because people do go like nuts for this stuff.
Yeah.
Like there's compilations you can see on YouTube of people like having these insane reactions to like announcements in the MCU. Like people will do reaction videos of like the reveal of Thanos or something, and people are like, they're crying. I'm like,
wow.
What the fuck? Why are you crying? Like, it's Thanos in a movie like that you're gonna watch and then forget about. Like, come on. That's kind of unfair of me to say it like that, but
yeah,
because that would be my reaction. But I've never been like so excited for something in a movie that I would cry. And I've been excited, like I'm really excited to see Scorsese's new movie, like Scorsese and De Niro working together for the first time in 20 plus years. Al Pacino's in it, like for me that's a big deal, but I'm not gonna cry about it. You know?
Some people do have a very deep emotional investment, in like the Marvel movies, the Star Wars movies. Which there's nothing wrong with that, but
that's definitely not. But I don't understand that. You know, I can't wrap my head around it. But who knows?
Hey, God bless them if they enjoy it. You know,
you gotta have your thing for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But
so it was just kind of like
it hasn't like ignited some interest. But what's the next one you're gonna see? I'm sure you'll see more, right?
More Marvel movies?
Yeah,
I'm not sure. I was secretly harboring a hope that there would be something in Ant-Man and the Wasp that would really turn me around and convert me and like re-engage me with kind of everything that's going on right now with the Marvel universe. But it didn't really. I don't know what the next one I see will be. There are a couple I would like to catch up on at some point. I'd like to see Black Panther. I'd kind of like to see Doctor Strange. Thor Ragnarok, I've heard a lot of good stuff about. So, I mean, there's ones I'd like to catch up on, but I'm really not, too eager at this point. There's a lot of other stuff I'd rather watch first.
Yeah. But since like there's 20 plus movies in the MCU, it's hard to let like one movie kind of represent them all, because it's like if I were to see a movie like Ant-Man and the Wasp and be a little disappointed, I'd be like, well, it could just be this one. Maybe I just saw the wrong movie. Yeah,
that's also true. I don't have as much of a frame of reference as probably other people do for saying how good this is compared to the other films, in the same universe.
How did your manager react to the movie? Did he really like it?
He did like it. He really enjoyed it, but he was saying it was kind of one of the weaker films that he'd seen recently. And we were talking about it actually, and we were mentioning how I don't think it'll make much impact, like what I have to say, like about like the plot or whether people should go see this. I think the people that are going to see this movie are going to see it no matter what, and whoever's not interested is not going to see it. So I don't really feel much of an urge to talk about like exactly what the plot is or kind of anything else. But the discussion we had, because he knew exactly where it fit in and kind of what it was setting up. I didn't really. I was just kind of looking at it as its own story, and I was kind of saying to him, like when we were talking about it afterwards, like it didn't seem like a lot like really happened in this movie. Like there's basically in the actual plot, there's only one thing they're trying to do. It's essentially there's a character trapped in kind of like this limbo, and they have to build like this machine to try and get this character out of limbo. And that's basically the whole movie. There's not really any larger arc going on. There's not really any kind of big thing that is having any kind of impact on the rest of the universe at large. It's just a fairly self-contained story about just essentially a rescue mission, but using the Ant-Man technology. And there's just a lot of obstacles that get thrown in their way that stretch that out to, you know, a 2-hour movie.
Yeah.
And then what really surprised me was at the end, during the first post-credits scene.
Oh, there was multiple?
Yes, there were two, actually. There was the first one, which was after like the animatic credits, where you get all the names of the actors and the above the line people. And then there was a post-credit scene, and then there were the actual credits, and then there was another post-credit scene. But it was actually in the first post-credit scene that the most significant plot event in the whole movie takes place.
Whoa.
Yes, and that was purely to set up part 2 of Infinity War.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I was talking with him, and I was kind of saying, like, I'm guessing Infinity War is kind of where all the, like, really significant shit is happening, and this is just kind of like a fun aside. And he was like, yeah, you're pretty much right there.
So...
What
happens? Do they like resurrect all the heroes they killed in part 1 of Infinity War?
No. Do you want me to spoil like what happens?
I mean, I don't really care. Everyone already knows.
Yeah, he spoiled it for me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Do you want me to just leave it a secret, like for you to discover at some point?
I don't care. You can just say. Yeah.
Okay,
I'll probably never watch it.
Yeah. Well, basically, from what he told me at the end of Infinity War Part 1. The Avengers actually lose, and Thanos gets like the gauntlet of power or whatever it is, and he snaps his fingers, and Infinity War Part 1 apparently ends with half of the galaxy being wiped out of existence.
Mm-hmm.
So like half of every living thing in the galaxy just vanishes, just like that. And at the end of Ant-Man, basically half of all the main characters in the movie vanish in the first post-credit scene. And it's like Ant-Man's kind of like in a spot where he's like in jeopardy, and then suddenly everyone else is gone, and he's kind of like the only one left. And you're kind of like, oh my God. And then it's like, go see Infinity War Part 2 to see what happens.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Which I was kind of like, okay, interesting. This is just kind of like basically just there to fill space between like the really big movies where they're actually really telling a story that has very high stakes.
So it's kind of like a 2-hour advertisement for Infinity War Part 2.
Actually, no, only the very end is an advertisement for Infinity War. This is just kind of like a goofy diversion, mostly, which, as far as goofy diversions go, it was fun. You know, Paul Rudd is a really charismatic, engaging actor. He's, you know, just doing stuff for 2 hours, that's not a boring thing, certainly. He knows how to make it entertaining. He knows how to engage you, you know, even if there's not really a lot going on. He brings humor to it. He brings likability to it. And the movie, I think, was also aware of the fact that it was just kind of like filling space. It didn't try to give a sense that it was more than it was. It was just kind of like, hey, this is just going to be, you know, a fun little addition before we get to the heavy stuff with Infinity War. Mm-hmm. So let's just have fun with it. And I think they did. And I enjoyed it. But yeah, it doesn't make me all that eager to go out and see any other Marvel movies.
Okay. Have you, how familiar are you with the DC stuff?
I saw Wonder Woman and Man of Steel. I don't think I've seen anything else. I don't remember exactly what all there is at this point that I haven't seen, but I know I haven't seen like Batman versus Superman or Justice League.
I think that's all of them. And then of course they're working on the sequels and stuff to all that.
Yeah, Aquaman.
Oh yeah, Aquaman's coming out. Can't wait for that. Did you like Man of Steel and Wonder Woman?
I thought they were okay. It was, Man of Steel, I didn't think was as bad as it seems to have like retroactively become in a lot of people's minds. I didn't think it was a terrible movie, but I didn't think it was a particularly good movie. Certainly not the best comic book film Zack Snyder has ever done. And Wonder Woman, I enjoyed. I thought was, you know, well made, but there wasn't really anything about it that felt really new or innovative to me. It was just kind of like all of the familiar comic book formulas done well, but not really anything else there that made me feel like, oh, this is something I really haven't seen before. And I know it's a female protagonist, it's a female director. That's all great stuff. I'm not saying any of that is bad, but I'm just saying for me as a viewer, and just take a look at me and take my opinion with a grain of salt, however much you need to. But for me, watching Wonder Woman, it was just kind of like, I feel like I've seen all this kind of stuff before, and it didn't really feel like it did anything new to me.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I think I've been a little hesitant on watching it, because I haven't seen it yet. And I've seen a lot of the praise online for it, and most of it just kind of revolved around like the fact that it was directed by a woman and it's a female star in a major effects superhero movie.
Yeah, a major blockbuster.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, that's awesome.
Great. I'm not. Yeah, wonderful. Right. I'm very happy.
But as a movie, is it still just a comic book movie, or is it gonna be a bit more than that? And I don't know. Because all the praise didn't really talk about the movie. It just talked about the kind of the social impact that this movie could have.
Yeah, it's certainly a groundbreaking movie for those reasons. I don't deny that, and I think that's a wonderful thing. I'm very happy that the movie was successful, and I hope it opens a lot of doors, for more female-fronted, blockbuster movies, more female directors. Yeah. Those are all wonderful things. I do not think it is a bad thing that movie did really well. I'm very happy that it did. But again, this is just my own individual reaction. I don't, pretend like this is the definitive opinion to have, but just my own personal reaction was I didn't really get a lot out of it. I didn't think it was particularly good, but everything that it's doing for the industry at large, I think is wonderful. And I'm very happy about that.
Yeah. And I have the same sort of like wonders about Black Panther, because that's another thing you hear. It's like, just like how impactful the movie can have socially and on the film industry, because like, you don't see a lot of like African Americans starring in movies like this. It almost never happens, especially like now that comic book movies are the big craze right now. This is the first one in I don't know how long that has starred like an African American. So like that's a big thing. And I'm like, all right, that's awesome. But
and that was also directed by an African American director.
Yeah, and I'm like, that's great. But I mean, as a movie though, is it still just a comic book movie? Because I don't really have interest in comic book movies, so I haven't gotten around to seeing Black Panther because of that. But
I heard
this one is supposed to be like especially good though. Like I've seen a lot of great reviews on it. And Ryan Coogler is his name who made it. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of him. I loved Creed. So I don't know. I'm still just worried that I'm gonna watch it and feel like, oh, man, it's a comic book movie. But
Black Panther is one. Yeah, I can't offer my 2 cents on that one. Haven't seen it, so I can't really offer an opinion on that one. But I've heard very good things about it. I certainly am curious to see it. I might watch it, one of these days. But even though comic book movies are huge in the popular consciousness right now, it is not really an enthusiasm I share, unfortunately. But that's okay. There's a lot of other stuff out there, and I'm just going to keep watching that.
yeah, for sure. And it is a great place to give opportunity to like voices that you don't see in big Hollywood, like from African Americans and from women, because it is very male dominated. Of course.
Has been for a while.
And probably will still be for a long time. Like that the change is going to be an extremely slow process.
It usually is.
So hopefully this will give filmmakers of all kinds like good opportunities to make high profile movies, because women and any minorities, whatever, like they do make a lot of movies, but they're not very widely seen. You kind of have to seek them out to find them. And they don't get like big budgets. They don't get big actors often. So you don't hear about them. Sometimes like one will kind of rise up because it does especially well, like critically, like, I still haven't seen it, but I heard like Tangerine was a really big movie, and that's about like
Yeah, that was a great film.
yeah.
It was directed by a man,
But
yeah,
yeah, but it's subject matter, you know, like it doesn't
yeah, it starred
star.
2 transgender actresses. Yes.
Yeah, and so you don't see that very often, and I know like movies like that are made, but you never hear about them.
Yeah,
There
you do have
was
to go out of your way a little bit to find
yeah
them.
yeah there was announced recently that there is going to be a comic book movie, right, starring a transgender person, or am
I
I?
saw that somewhere. I believe it's in the Supergirl television series. They're
Oh, okay, it's
introducing
a
the
TV
first,
show.
transgender
All right.
superhero.
Oh, okay. Well, there's some more mainstream exposure. I mean,
Yeah, it's
so
great. Yeah.
maybe the ball's rolling a bit more.
Yeah, I think things are definitely changing, and I think they're changing for the better. And yeah, it has to happen, in the big popular culture arena.
Right.
I wish I had more of an engagement just with the films themselves, but as far as what they're doing for positive change, I think it's great.
Mm-hmm.
Best thing about them, as far as I'm concerned, just as
Yeah.
movies. Yeah, I'm not that engaged with it,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately.
Yeah. But something good. I mean, guaranteed good. A lot of good things are going to come from it. I just hope something will come out that I'm more interested in seeing. But
yeah, just as far as a film itself.
yeah. But they definitely are out there. So I need to get off my ass and seek them out a bit more. And I encourage a lot of other people to do the same.
Yeah, that's the thing. I try not to say like, oh, all those Marvel movies are so awful, they suck, because I have been watching them, so I don't know. So
Yeah.
all I try to say is just like, I'm not really that engaged with it, so
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, yeah, I guess with anything, you can really only give your own personal like reaction or opinion on it.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah, I try not to speak for everyone. I try not to say like, people who enjoy this are stupid. I mean, because I disagree with everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, even I've disagreed with you when you mentioned Ready Player One. I'm less like, dude, that movie was not that good. But that's
but that's okay.
To jab at you right now for that. I'm like, how could you like? Well, man, it's my own opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, it's okay. We can disagree. It's all right.
I still love you, even if I hate you. I still do.
Even if you hate my opinions.
Yes, yeah, that's a better way. But
do you want to talk about that one? Like, I was gonna hand it over to you to mention a movie you had seen over the last week, but do you want to talk about Ready Player One? Because I would be curious to have a discussion about that.
Yeah, I did an episode on that one, and
which I saw that you posted, but that was one I actually didn't end up watching for whatever reason. I saw like you did your thing on Unsane. I watched that, and Tomb Raider, but for some reason Ready Player One was one that went by me when you posted that.
Well, that's good because it'll be a bit more fresh for you then.
Yeah.
Basically, like I was excited to see it, and I'll say like right away, like I do like the movie. I think it's a good one.
Okay.
But I was like really disappointed in it, and
oh no,
yeah, almost right away I got pretty numb to it, and because you get this like overload of images, like you look on the screen and you see all these things you recognize, and right away I just kind of shut all that out. I was just like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna see a bunch of stuff that I know. All right. I'll just like
so it was kind of like a sensory overload for you then.
Yeah, maybe. I think so. And I had to wonder like why? What was the point? Why am I seeing like the DeLorean here? Like why am I seeing King Kong? Like and I didn't quite get it, but it was fun. Like I liked the movie because it was well directed. The effects were really good. Visually the movie was extremely impressive, and I loved the set pieces and stuff like that. But my main gripe with it is really just because like I didn't care what was happening. I didn't I didn't care about the characters. I didn't care about really any of their motivations. Like everyone to me just felt like they were place fillers. Like, oh, we need a bad guy, so here's the bad guy. They got a great actor to play the bad guy. Ben Mendelsohn.
Yes.
He plays like great villains. Like
Yeah.
The characters he plays don't have to have any depth, and he just makes them fun. Like like his character in Rogue One it's the same thing. Like he's just a bad guy, but he's fun to watch. Ty Sheridan, I'm usually more interested in the roles he picks, but I'm not saying he played the role bad, but again, there just wasn't much depth to it. So it's like I know how much talent this kid has, and I just didn't really see it used that much in this one. And also, the only character that I really liked was Mark Rylance. Like
yeah, he was great.
Yeah, I mean, he's just so instantly likable in everything I've seen him in. So he brought a lot of that to his character in this movie. But I love just like the way he saw the world and the way he saw like the Oasis in the movie. His just kind of his demeanor just seems so like sensitive yet just aware, and he was very. I think he was able to tap into like something about video games and why people want to escape the real world, and he saw it like for like the criticisms people have, but he also saw it as kind of a wonderful thing. He saw the beauty in it too.
And he was a guy that obviously had a lot of difficulty connecting to people around him, and like the games he created and the Oasis itself were kind of like his way of connecting with humanity at large. And like what you said, like his sensitivity, like you could feel that he when he said like those like would be those kind of like very optimistic things that he says about the Oasis and not wanting to make it corporate, and there are a lot of dialogue exchanges about that, but like his sort of just pure optimism about it and wanting to be this good humanitarian thing, you believe that he genuinely means that, and that's what he really wants for it. Because it means so much to him.
He created this thing that like became the biggest phenomenon in the world, like made trillions of dollars, I'm going to assume. Yet like there was like money was never a motivation for him. Like he's just such a sweet, genuine guy. I really liked him. I would love to have seen a lot more of him. I would have preferred like more of a movie about him, but then it would have been an entirely different movie in the first place. I think like Spielberg is the director to make a movie like this, especially since he's made so many of the movies that are like that we obsess over now in pop culture. I found it a little odd that like a movie that takes place in the future is still fetishizing like the 1980s the way we do now. Where I mean I forget what year this movie's supposed to take place in, but like they would probably look back at today as like their retro, not so much the 80s. But again, I get it. I also had some issues with kind of like the way the world was built, in that like there were moments in the movie where things that are happening in real life affected things that happen in the game. Like there's a quick moment where a woman jumps up on a couch in real life, and like in the game she like did the same thing, and I'm like, whoa, why is that couch affecting anything that happens in the game? That makes no sense. Not a big deal, but it did take me out of it quite a bit. For me, it begged the question, like, so what are the rules here? I'm not totally following. And there was a few other problems I had. I go into a lot more detail in my video, but like just like the way video games work, and I don't think that it's just possible for it to work in that way in the movie. But at the same time, it is just a movie, so like I can brush over that, and they have a story that they're trying to tell, so they can't really bog the pacing down with trying to explain every little detail. But essentially my point is like the way you play, like the way a controller is set up to play a game like Grand Theft Auto isn't going to work the same way you would play a game like Tekken. Like there's just different mechanics, different physics. Buttons are mapped extremely differently.
I see what you mean.
Different feels. In Ready Player One, they seamlessly go from like racing segments to like running to doing like floating around in the air and dancing. It's like you would have to like reload the game with different controls and stuff every time. Again, I'm not really going to criticize the story for that, because
they're controlling it with their bodies, though.
Yeah, but that would also mean that like they should have that actual skill in real life to do that kind of stuff. They should be able to drive cars that way in real life. but it's just a movie. So it bugged me, but that's just because I'm kind of a picky gamer type. So just like the movie, just as a movie, I'm not going to dock it points for that. But just be, if you take games like super serious, you're going to see stuff like that and take some issue with it. But in a nutshell, that's pretty much how I felt about the movie. I basically just saw it as a movie where Spielberg just kind of pulled the stops out and just let himself kind of go crazy visually and have a lot of fun. And I had fun with the movie, but the only time like I felt like I was in love with it was during the Shining sequence.
Yes, which was a great sequence.
Yes. Yeah. that is like one of the best sequences in all of Spielberg. But overall, the whole movie for me ranks towards the bottom of his filmography for me.
I'm gonna have to, if you want my perspective on this.
Yes, I do.
Okay. So that we could have a bit of a dialogue here. My feeling on the movie was kind of in the opposite direction. I thought this was one of Spielberg's best movies.
Whoa.
Okay. Yeah. I thought it was really one of the movies where I think he challenged himself. He pushed himself the hardest. He's said multiple times in interviews that it is one of the most difficult movies he's ever had to make. And I think you can tell that in the movie with how much it tries to balance all at the same time of having the real world and the game world and sometimes games within the game world. So there are certain action set pieces in the movie where you have like 3 simultaneous lines of action, especially in the big finale. You've got so many things happening on so many different planes of reality and so many different lines of action and suspense and so many different characters on such a large scale, and it's all happening so quickly, but Spielberg handles it so flawlessly that you never lose track of what's going on, who's doing what, and how far each of those lines of action has progressed and how they all converge.
Yeah.
I thought it was really masterfully handled, and I don't think there are a lot of filmmakers that could have handled something on that scale with that much energy, with that much creativity, and that could have done it that well, with that much just pure lucidity, where you're following every step of the action as it progresses. So I just think, pure as a technical film, the number of effects that were in it, the amount of detail that was in it, and also just the sheer momentum that it has. I think it really showed on screen, like how much Spielberg really tried to challenge himself on this one and try things he'd never tried before and really push himself the way he did, when he was at the beginning of his career and doing all of these things and saying like, what if I tried this? What if I tried that? Every once in a while, he'll do a film like that where, he just goes into it and he throws out his entire rule book and he just makes it all up again on the spot. I felt like Ready Player One was one of those movies where he really tried to reinvent himself and did so very successfully. Because I went into it not really expecting much. When I saw the initial like Comic-Con trailer, they didn't really show you anything of the movie. They basically showed you stuff from just like the first 20 minutes or so, just kind of setting up the world and showing that first like big race. And I'd never read the book. I didn't know anything about the book. So going into it, I was kind of like, is this just going to be like 80s references? I didn't know if there was going to be an actual story to it or not. But I was kind of like, I'm a big Spielberg fan. He usually does something impressive with every movie. So I'll go see it. My brother kind of had to convince me a little bit. But he got me out to the theater and I'm sitting there kind of like, and there were a lot of like trailers for like Infinity War, and I was really burnt out on stuff like that at that point. This was a couple months ago. I'm feeling better now about it, but towards the beginning of the year, I was really just like, oh God, here comes the summer. And just really not expecting to enjoy this movie at all. But then it starts, and it's Spielberg, so it's very well shot. It's very well staged. It's very well, just directed and written. And there's a lot of things visually happening. I'm kind of like, this is impressive. Like, I'm just looking on screen and I'm very impressed by what I'm seeing. And then that first big race happens, and that's a tremendous set piece. Again, just the sheer speed of it, the energy of it, how every second there's something coming at you that surprises you and that shifts it somewhere else, and then now we're here, now we're there. It felt like a movie, you know, made by a much younger filmmaker, not a guy who just turned 70.
Yeah.
It had that kind of, just pure unstoppable momentum. So I was like, after that big first race, I was kind of like, that was very impressive. That was probably one of the most impressive, like, just set pieces I've ever seen in a Spielberg movie. But then I started thinking, like, but where do we go from here? Like, is there an actual story? Will this develop to anything? Will it just be a continuous series of references? And at that point, like, the story really kicks in. You start getting to know the characters a little bit more. Everything starts coming together a little bit more. The stakes start getting raised. And then, the villain is introduced. And I thought Ben Mendelsohn was great. And all the backstory and mythology. And I started getting really drawn into it. I started getting really engaged with it because I had no idea that it was actually going to be about something, and that, actions would have consequences, and one thing would lead to another thing, and it would actually develop, along a narrative through line. So I was very surprised to discover that, and really enjoyed just kind of following the story wherever it was going, and being surprised by it, and being constantly taken in new directions. It was a movie that I was kind of going into it with a bit of fatigue, like, oh, I do not want to see a movie like this. And it kind of woke me back up and re-engaged me and surprised me, and reminded me, like, oh yeah, when you approach it with a lot of talent and enthusiasm and engagement, and when you're like Spielberg and you have a lot of love for what you do and you believe in what you do, it can turn into something really special. And it was a movie where, like, I was kind of going through a bit of a depression at the time when I saw it, and I went into the theater not feeling that good. And when I walked out of that movie, I felt wonderful. I had been uplifted, which is what Spielberg does, better than just about any other filmmaker out there. The movie is a fantasy. It is a humanist, optimist fantasy, but to me, that is not a bad thing. That is not a reason to criticize it. It just is what it is, because Spielberg is an optimist. Spielberg is a humanist. And I've had conversations with people saying, like, the people would never win against the corporations in a situation like that, or people would never stop playing that game. He says, like, they try to, get people to stop playing the game and engage in real life. The real world doesn't work like that. The good guys never win. It's like, okay, that's your point of view, but that's not the movie's point of view. It's presenting you a point of view. And yes, it is a fantasy, but there's nothing wrong with a fantasy. It's presenting a perspective and doing, I think, a really wonderful job at that. So it was a movie that just totally reversed my mood and made me walk out of the theater feeling really, really good and hopeful and optimistic. And it did it so effectively and so potently that still to this day, that movie stays with me a lot more than a lot of other films I've seen this year.
Wow. Okay. Well, I actually do agree with most of what you said. I mean, I wasn't like all like hopeful and uplifted and stuff by the end. Well, because I walked out of the theater just like, that's a good time.
Yeah.
And that was kind of it. But definitely, like, everything you said just about the technical aspect of the movie is very true, and like that is why so much of it works, is because of how brilliantly made it is.
Yes.
Because I mean, every set piece is just like, it's eye candy and it's big and it's epic and there's so much going on, yet kind of hinting back what we said before, what we were talking about before, like, it is clearly told, like, you're still able to follow what is going on. The climax of the movie features literally probably thousands of different, like, characters, like, or a bunch of people, a bunch of good guys, a bunch of bad guys, and a huge just like battle, just crashing into each other.
Yes, which we've seen done, a thousand times.
Yeah, things are exploding. Like, there's giants everywhere, and there's just a lot going on. That like they have to get inside like the top of one of them to deactivate it or something. And while all that's happening, like, it's also cutting into the person playing that Atari game trying to beat it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So all these elements are balanced, and we've seen Spielberg do this before, like in movies like Jurassic Park. Like there's all these different things happening that he's cutting back and forth between.
Yeah, lots of simultaneous action.
Yeah, and no one does it better than Spielberg does, and that's why this movie works. I just couldn't really latch on to any of it, you know. Like to me, it was just like Spielberg making a really well done action movie, and I didn't have any sort of like emotional connection with it like I did with other movies of his. Like I really love BFG, because BFG
like that one too. Yeah,
made me feel that way. Like I walked out of it just like feeling just like, man, I feel so good about the world right now. and it's brilliantly made. Like he's able to bring that kind of energy to movies that even aren't action movies. Like I think like Bridge of Spies has that energy, and Lincoln has that energy, because the way he directs dialogue scenes, he directs like action scenes. There's a lot of movement in his camera, and his characters are moving around all over the place.
Yeah, there's never a wasted moment. He kind of knows what the purpose of every little beat is.
Right,
you know?
And he will like. There's just a lot. There's a lot going on in scenes with just people in rooms talking even, and it makes it very exciting. And we've also seen how great he is with action movies. Obviously you have like Minority Report and the Indiana Jones movies, and to me, like Ready Player One was just kind of like just a taste of that kind of stuff. It just didn't have anything that elevated it to like, wow, that was a great experience for me.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah.
For me, it was there. That thing was there, but you know, obviously, it's always in the eye of the beholder. You know.
Right. Yeah, and it's like it's definitely a movie I would watch multiple times. Like I think I could see myself like putting this movie on pretty much any day, any mood, just like putting it on and enjoying it. And I guess it's one of those things where like with Spielberg, you expect like this, so when you get this, you're kind of disappointed. But with any other filmmaker, you expect this. So when you get this, you're just like, wow, that was really great. So maybe if someone else had made this movie other than Spielberg, had made it this exact same way, I would probably have better things to say about it. I don't know.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But for me, it was one of the movies of his that impressed me the most. Mm-hmm. I got to say, I think it ranks up there with amongst his best achievements.
Oh man, it's way better than Always. It's way better than.
Come on, don't patronize me.
I just want to say I'm just saying that so it's like I didn't hate this movie.
No, I get it. Yeah, I get it.
Like I would say I like this one kind of like as much as I like War of the Worlds. So like it's a really fun movie. That's it.
I'm sorry to hear that, but yeah, obviously I can't make you feel what I felt. You know, it just has to be there.
Yeah, and I love Spielberg so much. Like I'm always excited for him making a movie. And I'm excited for his next one. I'm even sort of excited for another Indiana Jones. I know it's gonna suck. Like I know that.
You think? You think it's gonna suck?
Well, David Koepp is writing it, and you know, enough said.
Which he wrote Crystal Skull.
Yeah. I don't know. I would actually defend Crystal Skull a bit more than the average person would. So I am excited.
It's one that as the years go by, I warm up to it more and more.
Yeah. I'll definitely see Indiana Jones, what is it, 5, and and I'll be excited for it. And then of course just anything else he does. Like he's always mixing it up. He's got a lot of range. He can do high concept action like Ready Player One. He can do super intense Holocaust dramas. He can do World War II movies. Like he can do sci-fi. He can do it all. Like and you never know what to expect from him.
Yeah, actually, Spielberg movie I was thinking about today at work that I was like, that was a really good movie. Like people don't give that movie enough credit. The Terminal.
Yeah, I love The Terminal. That is a great movie.
Yeah, I was just for some reason it popped into my head at work, and I was like, man, Terminal's underrated.
Yeah, it seriously is. Like that's another one where you just walk out feeling so good about.
Yeah,
like you just want to hug somebody.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And I've also got to say about Ready Player One too. I was surprised that I wound up enjoying the constant references. I thought, based on the trailer, I thought it was, like you said, I thought it was going to distract me and bug me. But going in, my expectation was, I thought the purpose of the movie would simply be to have references. And it turned out the movie had a purpose of its own and a story of its own, and the references were simply decoration upon that. Yeah. And so once I realized that, I was able to really get behind it. And part of my enjoyment, came from how densely layered all the visuals were and how just every single shot you could spot a little thing here or there. And you could tell that Spielberg put in a lot of his own too, that it wasn't just 80s stuff. It was also stuff that he was clearly nostalgic for, like Byron Haskin movies and George Pal movies, like War of the Worlds. You see one of the Martian ships from the original War of the Worlds in a scene. It's like, you can really tell, like, oh, that's definitely Spielberg. Or the Citizen Kane stuff you'd spot every now and again.
Yeah. I'm a big Rush fan, of course. I don't know if you knew that about me.
I think you've mentioned it once or twice.
So to see like Rush stuff in the movie too was cool, and I'm glad that it wasn't just like 80s stuff, because the movie is like primarily 80s.
Yeah.
But they tipped their toes, I think, even into the 90s a little bit, into the 70s. And the Rush, there's a Rush poster for an album that they did in the 70s. I'm like, hey, that's 70s. That's cool.
Oh, it's in Mark Rylance's bedroom, childhood bedroom, isn't it? Yeah, okay.
Yep, 2112.
Also, one of the few Spielberg references in the movie, too. He had a Raiders of the Lost Ark poster as well.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Wasn't there... I mean, there was a T-Rex. I'm assuming that's supposed to be Jurassic Park, but I mean,
open for debate.
Yeah, I don't really know what else it'd be, but
yeah, it is by the guy that did the dinosaur movie. So
yeah.
Oh, and one other thing I wanted to mention on Indiana Jones 5, I'm cautiously optimistic for that one as well.
Yeah, because, since Spielberg, like, he is always really good. I don't think he would do another Indiana Jones movie just because it's a paycheck. Like, I think he would only do one if there was real inspiration for one.
Yeah, and the thing I've kind of been saying to people when it comes up to it is, I don't think Spielberg's a director that makes the same mistakes twice. He's kind of somebody, he'll make his mistake, like he'll go on a complete ego trip where he's, not really, he doesn't have anybody around him, to tell him no. And he ends up like with 1941, where he just goes completely crazy and he goes way over schedule and way over budget. And he's just kind of like, I'm Steven Spielberg. I can do whatever I want.
Yeah, I made Jaws. Come on.
Yeah, this will make a fortune. And 1941 flops. And then from that point on, he's like, oh, okay, I need to keep my ego in check. And since then, he's never had a movie like that has just spiraled out of control and gone colossally over budget. He does, like the restoration of E.T., where he replaces guns with walkie-talkies and stuff like that, back when that was kind of a trend to fix, quote-unquote, things in old movies. And he saw, like, the negative fan reaction for that, and he was like, okay, I'd better not do that. And then when E.T. comes out on Blu-ray, it's the original version, and Spielberg comes down very firmly saying, like, yeah, I tried it. Obviously, people didn't like it, so I'm not going to do that. And even all my old movies, I'm not going to try and fix things or, erase wires. Just what they are, and I'm just going to live with them.
Yeah.
And so clearly he learned the lesson. He's not going to make the same mistake twice and try to, alter things about his older movies. He's just going to leave them the way they are. I think Indy 4... it's kind of a similar thing where he's like, hey, there's all this CGI technology now. That kind of opens up a lot of possibilities. We can get a little bit crazier with this one. Maybe he went a little too crazy on Indiana Jones 4 in a few spots. But I think he's fully aware of that. He knows about, like, the nuke the fridge now has kind of become the new terminology. Yeah, the new jump the shark. Yeah. Uh-huh. And he's okay with it. He laughs about it. It's like, yeah, I guess maybe I went a little too far there. But he gets it, he understands, like, okay, I see how people reacted to that. And I think he'll keep something like that in mind. So if he's going into Indiana Jones 5, because I really believe he's not a director that's going to make the same mistake twice, I think he's going to go into this one really with the mindset that, like, okay, let's pull this one back a little bit. Like, let's get back to basics. Let's make it about stunts. Let's make it about sets. And let's not get too crazy with the CGI. Let's make this a real Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because, Harrison Ford is kind of old.
Yeah.
But you know, I thought he was too old for Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and I think he was great in that movie.
Yeah, he's actually.
Yeah, and also like since Indiana Jones 4, like the reaction is so bad to it, you find just a million things people complain about, like no, like this is why the movie sucks. But then the next person's like, this is why it sucks, and the next person's like, this is why it sucks. So you have to like wonder, like, okay, what is the real reason? Like, what's the real thing you would fix if you move on to the next one? Because like one of the things everyone complains about number 4 is like, oh, there's aliens in it, and that's stupid. But me, I'm like, I don't think aliens is that far fetched for an Indiana Jones movie. Like, I see why there's aliens in that movie. You know, like what's the big deal with that? So everyone has like their own opinions on why 4 failed. So it's going to be hard for the team working on number 5 to like know what they really need to do to fix it.
I feel like you can get, if you start looking too closely at it, then yeah, I think it gets a little bit confused. But I think if you just step back and try to look at the broad outlines of it, it's like, okay, people didn't seem to like the aliens that much. People didn't seem to like the really heavily digital areas of the film that much. So let's just pull that back a little bit. Let's be very careful about how we approach that. I think Spielberg's smart. He's very, very smart, and he's very, very perceptive. He wouldn't have lasted this long if he wasn't very smart and very perceptive.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So I think the reason I'm cautiously optimistic for Indiana Jones 5, I'm not saying it's, you know, without question, it's definitely going to be good. I'll make the declaration right now. I'm not saying that, but I have hope for it. I think it could end up being really good because I think Spielberg is smart and is perceptive and knows what people didn't like about the 4th one. And I don't think he'd make that same mistake twice with another Indiana Jones movie.
All right. Well, that's a good point. I would agree. And I think it'll be fun. I don't know. I guess I am adjusting my expectations because I remember going into the 4th one and how disappointed I was when I came out.
At the time I was too, but subsequently I've reevaluated that.
Right, yeah, because you know what to expect now, and like you can kind of maybe forgive this, or you change your perspective on that.
Yeah, my perspective on it now is that like all the things that I hated about that movie and that other people seem to hate about that movie, it's maybe max like 10 minutes of that film. And it's a 2-hour film. So we're talking 120 minutes. That's 110 good, solid minutes of entertainment and exceptional filmmaking, punctuated occasionally by 10 total minutes that aren't that bad, honestly, but are yet not so good. But honestly, that ratio, kind of like, does that really deserve, you know, to earn the status of like, oh, it's one of the worst movies ever made? Like, come on, like, let's try and keep that in perspective.
Yeah, like you haven't seen a whole lot of movies if you think Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is one of the worst movies ever made.
Yeah, or the Star Wars prequels, or
exactly. And also just the way I look at movies now is very different than the way I did when that movie came out when I was like
same here
13, 14.
Yeah,
like because now what I want out of a movie is very different. You know, at that time I was more like a fanboy. You know, it's like I was more like, this is what Indiana Jones is. So if you stray from this, it's not good. And now I just look at movies just kind of as movies and forms of artistic expression, and like I just care more about like giving me something I haven't seen before, or just being just different or something. I don't even really know. Like I don't even know. I don't even know if I know what a good or bad movie is now, because all I want is just to have an interesting experience.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's just hard for me to like really put it into words why I liked or disliked the movie. So now, like when I watch Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I'm not seeing like inconsistencies with the other movies as much. I'm just seeing more like wow, look at how well directed this is. Like the opening sequence is so great. Like there's one shot in particular that I always remember of like of like the shots like in the rear view mirror, and then it pans over to the side mirror of a car, and then it turns over here and a car drives by, and it's like Spielberg took like 5 different shots and combined it all into one, and I was like, that was amazing, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much now how I'm looking at this movie, and even some of like the really
fixating less on the things you don't like and giving more appreciation to the things you actually do like.
Yeah, because I know a little bit about movies, and like I know how hard it is to make them. I mean, I don't know how hard it is to make a movie, but I have a better understanding of how hard it is to make a movie than just like your average moviegoer. So when I'm looking at like say the scene where they're speeding down the forest, the 2 cars side by side, and Shia LaBeouf is sword fighting with Cate Blanchett, like everyone's just like, oh, this is stupid. But what I'm trying to see is like, well, look at how much is happening on screen. Like they're falling back and forth between these 2 cars. The skull's flying all over the place. Like they're having to worry about hazards all around them. Look at how well shot it is. Like I'm just trying to see more to it than just like, oh, this is stupid, you know? Like, this wouldn't happen in Indiana Jones. I see a bit more in that movie than just that. So I'm actually able to quite enjoy that movie. Again, it's not like one of Spielberg's best, I don't think, but it is kind of underappreciated.
I would agree. I would absolutely agree. Yeah. And you reminded me of something Guillermo del Toro once said when he was kind of talking about how when he was younger, he had this very specific idea of how films should be made and what film should be. And he was saying, like, as he's gotten older, that perspective has widened quite a bit. And now he sees movies, they can be a lot of different things. Movies can be made in a lot of different ways. And he was saying, like, contrary to what you would expect, flexibility does come with age.
Yeah, it does. I mean, when you're a kid, like, how many kinds of movies will you not watch no matter what? You know, black and white, foreign,
subtitles.
Like there's so many just kind of arbitrary things you just won't deal with. And as you get older, like sometimes it just has to do with experience. Like, so you experience a black and white movie that you go, wow, that was really great. Maybe there's something to it. Like, so then you broaden your horizons a bit more. I know I definitely had my aversion to things like that, and I did not watch a lot of movies like I remember I did not care to see like anything animated for a long time. Like when I was like an edgy teenager, and I thought I was cool because I was like, oh, that's for kids. And it's like, no, not necessarily. It's not just for kids. Like, and even if it was, why can't you enjoy it anyway?
Yeah.
So but then you come across something that kind of makes you go, oh wow, okay. A lot of people bash on things like anime when they haven't really experienced anime, or what their idea of anime is like just, you know, something you watch on Saturday morning when you're a little kid. Like I don't mean to bash on something like Dragon Ball Z or Pokemon, but when they're like, oh, that's all it is, it's like, no, it's so much more than that. Like, watch Spirited Away and tell me, like, this is what you thought it was, you know? Like, you can totally. Actually, like, there is something to be done with this way of telling a story. You know, there is no one way to tell a story or one way to make a movie, because if there was, then all movies would just be made that way. You know,
they'd all be the same. Yeah,
it'd be clear as day. Like, this is how it's done. Anything else is bad. So everyone would just keep doing that. But since it's not that simple, like, that's why movies are so different.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I just don't see why so often now, it seems, maybe my perspective is skewed a little bit, but it just seems all too often there is that fixation. There is that rigid fixation that if there's anything wrong with the movie and you fixate on it hard enough, you can blow it all out of proportion and make it seem like that ruins the whole movie. Mm-hmm. Like Indiana Jones surviving a nuclear blast in a refrigerator. It doesn't exactly work. It's not my favorite part of the movie. I think it's as dumb as everybody else. But honestly, is it going to sink a whole movie that hundreds of people have put an awful lot of work and effort into? And yeah, like you're saying, that has so many things going for it when you really look at it and you see like, wow, that was an amazing shot, or this scene's really well staged, or that actor's giving a really good performance. You just... yeah, I think you gain a bit more sophistication when you start realizing like, oh, this thing that I just wanted to dismiss and kind of in my mind kind of put over into that area of just like, oh, this is trash. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to consider it. I can just, you know, I can categorize it and then move on with my life. Like all of those things, they have so much more to offer. Just the whole conversation could be so much more complex and interesting if people just actually think for themselves and look for themselves and decide for themselves and not fixate so much on those few things they don't like, but appreciate that, like, okay, it's not perfect. Big deal. Doesn't have to be perfect. There's still a lot to appreciate.
Yeah, that's an important message to give to like haters of The Last Jedi, you know.
Oh yeah, which we haven't discussed on the show, but we have had conversations about.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that one sometime.
I still have not seen it, so yeah.
You probably haven't seen Force Awakens, or have you?
No, I haven't.
Okay, yeah, it's a really interesting thing that I think you would want to see, because it ties in exactly with what we're talking about. When people say like, this is what Star Wars has to be, and when movies aren't this thing, like, it's bad. And everyone, of course, is going to have a different idea, even if it's just slightly, but they're going to have a different idea of what Star Wars is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And people don't appreciate like how hard it is to make a movie, you know?
Yeah. And it seems like it always comes in the form of like a declaration. When you see like the thumbnails on YouTube, it's like, why Last Jedi was a complete cinematic failure. Like, not why I think Last Jedi was a complete cinematic failure. Here are the definitive reasons why, no argument, Last Jedi was a complete cinematic failure.
Yeah.
Like, geez, that rigidity, it's like religious dogma. Like, there's no room for discussion or argument. It's like, my God.
Yeah, they're not really looking at movies as like movies, I guess, because we made little movies ourselves, and we've read a lot about the process. We've read books on it. We read about like the hardships and stuff, like making movies, or seen documentaries on it. So like we get that for a movie to come together, even if it is a complete disaster, like, it's not like it's because everyone working on it is stupid, or
or they didn't try.
Exactly. Like even when you read just a little bit into something like The Last Airbender, the Shyamalan movie, like just a little bit from Shyamalan's perspective, you find that it was hard to kind of get that movie put together, and he had to do a lot of things he didn't really want to do, and things were taken out of his control a little bit. Like, yeah, the movie is a disaster, and I hate it. But I mean, I'm not gonna like curse the names of the people involved.
Yeah,
and I'm not gonna say like that there isn't anything about it that's at least competent. You know, there are some good things about it.
Yeah, you have to be willing to forgive the fact that nobody ever sets out to make a bad movie. Just sometimes that's what happens.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why I love the idea of all those fanboys actually getting $200 million to remake The Last Jedi.
Just make their own piece of shit.
Yeah. Just to put them in their place. Like, oh, can you really do better? Like this, like making multi-$100 million movies is what we do, you know? Like, you think you could do better? You're some dork that plays with the Star Wars toys in his mom's basement. You know?
Yeah,
like,
it's so easy when you're not actually on a set day to day, trying to make decisions, deal with a budget, deal with the huge logistics, you know, of all the people and departments and things you have to do to make a movie on that scale. It's so easy to sit on your couch and say, like, why'd they do it this way? They should have done it that way. Like, they're idiots. Give me $100 million. I can make a better movie than this. Get off your ass first, then we'll see.
Yeah, and I'm definitely guilty of saying things like that.
Oh God, me too. Yeah.
So,
I can't get too mad because we're all only human. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes like I'll watch a movie and I'll end up really hating it, and I'll be like, oh, this gives me hope. Like, if I ever actually get to direct a movie, like, I'll know it'll at least be better than this, you know, and this did well. I don't know that. Yeah.
So do you wanna mention a movie you saw? I think we've already actually gone on for quite a while. Try to keep this around an hour, I think.
How far into it are we?
I'm actually not sure. I keep meaning to put on a timer when we start these, and I just keep forgetting.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's been that long, but I know we've covered a lot. So
yeah.
Well, actually, I think I brought up the last movie. I mean, this all started with Ready Player One, I think. So maybe.
Oh, is that going to be yours? Do you have another one you want to mention?
Maybe, but it's your turn. You go.
Okay. I have two I could possibly mention because I've started trying to go through a bunch of the Criterions on my shelf that I have yet to watch. Oh, yeah. So I actually watched two that I had never seen before. One I mentioned last week. I had started Fellini Satyricon and was about halfway through that when we did last week's episode. I finished that. So we could talk about that, or we could also talk about Wim Wenders' The American Friend.
Oh, I want to see that really bad. I mean, I guess I'll ask you about American Friend just because you did get to talk at least a little bit about Satyricon. Did it at least like maintain its craziness through the end?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it's a movie that I think has all the strengths and all the weaknesses of Fellini's genius, in that it doesn't really have a plot. It's kind of self-indulgent. It isn't really that concerned, with whether the audience can follow everything or whether or not they're necessarily interested in everything. It's not really a movie that sets out to entertain in a conventional sense. I think it does set out to entertain, but not really in the way we traditionally expect from movies. So it is a movie that is just kind of about Fellini indulging in his own imagination and his own, desire for excess and imagery and conducting movement and color. So it is kind of a movie that it lapses into a lot of sections where just kind of like things are happening and moving around, but I don't know why anything is happening or moving around. It's beautiful shots and editing and set design and everything. And like, I'm amazed by what I'm looking at. But whenever I step back and think like, why is this happening? What is this leading to? It's like, I think it's just, to have a really great looking shot more than anything else, which Fellini does often in his work. But that's kind of just part of what you have to take as part of his genius. There really was nobody else like him with his kind of powers, of cinematic conjuring for doing what he did. There was nobody else even remotely like him that comes close to making films in that way. So you kind of have to take everything that comes with that genius, the self-indulgence and the meandering qualities and everything else to get what is so amazing as well, which is just the fact that he had a mind, for creating movies like absolutely no other. And that's the incredible thing about his work, There's nothing else like it. You may not necessarily like enjoy it all the way through. You might get a little bored in spots, but there's always going to be stuff in there that like you've never seen in any other film.
Yeah, I've noticed that watching his movies. Like, I've only seen like a small handful of them, but they are always memorable. Like you've never experienced anything like it, but you may not enjoy the whole thing all the way through, but you can at least appreciate it for its originality.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the same thing with like Godard. You watch a movie,
oh, yeah.
or at least like the way I've reacted to a lot of his movies is I didn't really like them that much, but there were a lot of moments that I was like, I've never seen anything like that. Like in Weekend, the car driving down the road for like an hour.
Yeah, the really long tracking shot. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was another shot in Weekend where the camera like pans 360 just endlessly. And
oh yeah,
a lot of just really cool stuff like that. Or Band of Outsiders when they're dancing in that diner or whatever, you know what I'm talking about?
The music keeps cutting out. Yeah, they just dance in silence.
Right, yeah. His movies are just filled with that, and they are very unique experiences.
Yeah. I think Fellini's a little bit easier to enjoy. He's more of a showman. He's more exuberant. Yeah. Godard can be a little stale sometimes. With Fellini, at least there's always, that passionate exuberance, so there's always color and movement and things happening. It's just whenever you start getting a little impatient, like, is this scene leading anywhere? And then it'll just cut right to the next scene. It's like, okay, I guess none of that was really necessary, but It's part of Fellini's process. I guess I just have to give myself over to it.
Yeah, I guess so. Just kind of be along for the ride.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah. And then American Friend. I haven't seen a lot of Wim Wenders' early work. I'm a big fan of his, but I've really only seen like more of his, I guess, 80s onward. You know, I'd seen like Wings of Desire, Paris, Texas, which I think is one of both of ours favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, it's a possibility of my all-time favorite movie, like if I had to pick one. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's a great one. It's one I've loved since the first time I saw it. It's still one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah.
And even a lot of the weirder stuff he did, like kind of in the 90s, like $1 Million Hotel with like Mel Gibson and Jeremy Davies and Mila Jovovich. One of the strangest movies I think I've ever seen, but I really love it. And then like documentaries he's done recently, like he did the 3D dance one, Pina, that was really good. And just other, different little things here and there, like Hammett. Do you know about Hammett?
I've heard of it, but I have not seen it.
Yeah, it's like a fictionalized imagining of the author Dashiell Hammett, who wrote Maltese Falcon. It's like an imagining of Hammett himself as like a hard-boiled private eye, actually living out one of his stories. It was the only other film actually produced by American Zoetrope at the time of its height. Like while Coppola was basically pouring all of his money into One from the Heart, which would end up destroying his studio, the only other movie he managed to get produced at that time was Hammett. And he had all these other ones going. He was going to produce like a movie by Godard. He was going to produce like a movie by Michael Powell, who hadn't done a film since Peeping Tom in 1960. Like Coppola was actually going to produce a new film by Michael Powell, but never happened. Just all the money was going into his thing. And Hammett, Hammett was.
The American Zoetrope story is just so crazy. Like, and all the different directors he had promised to like fund movies for.
Totally,
man, like it rose. It was like it rose just so quick, and then boom, just instantly.
Godfather Part 2, Apocalypse Now, and then after One from the Heart, just
ran
it right into the ground.
Yeah, I'd love to read a book just all about American Zoetrope.
I would too. Yeah, I've done a couple of the unmade masterpieces where the films I've covered, like Ronnie Rocket or The Tourist, they ended up at Zoetrope at that same time, pretty much. It was like Coppola said, like, yeah, I'll make that, and it never happened. There were so many films like that. It would have been amazing if he could have kept that going somehow.
Yeah.
But the only one that managed to get out of there was Wim Wenders' Hammett. And the way he talks about it today, he said it was like absolute hell making that movie.
Is it good or?
I actually like it. I think it's really good. Yeah, it's an underrated, underseen film. I do like it. It pops up on like Netflix or Hulu every now and again. Anyone watching, I would recommend to check it out. But the film of his I watched, The American Friend, it was kind of like his breakthrough movie. Like he'd been doing stuff in Germany for a while. He did like the Road trilogy, and a few other movies just kind of produced independently in Germany. And American Friend was kind of like his first like big multinational production. He got like an American actor in. He was doing scenes.
Dennis Hopper, right?
Yes, Dennis Hopper, and he was adapting a book by a famous author. He was adapting a Patricia Highsmith novel. Which, do you know who Patricia Highsmith is? She wrote. She's most well known for the Ripley novels, like Talented Mr. Ripley.
Oh, okay.
And she also wrote the novel that inspired Strangers on a Train.
Oh, wow. All right. Yeah, I mostly know literature through film. So
as do I, to be honest. But yeah, she published a couple of Ripley novels at the time, I think. And the one that American Friend is adapted from is called Ripley's Game. It was actually unpublished at the time. Like Wenders like met with Patricia Highsmith and was just telling her how much he loved her work, and she'd already been adapted to screen a couple times, like this movie. Yeah, Strangers on a Train, and this film, which is pretty good too, Purple Noon.
Oh, I've heard of that. That's Louis Malle, right?
No, it's René.
Or he made a movie with Moon in the title, right?
Yeah, you're thinking of Black Moon.
Ah, damn it. Okay. I tried to sound smart, but it didn't work.
Hey, there you go.
Ah, there it is. All right. Who made Purple Moon?
Rene Clement.
Okay.
Director I'm not familiar with. But this is actually based on The Talented Mr. Ripley.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
But just a lot of years before the American film.
Yeah, quite a few. Which The Talented Mr. Ripley is also a pretty damn good movie too.
Mm-hmm.
So American Friend was adapted from Ripley's Game, which had not been published. Like Wenders met with Highsmith, told her he wanted to make a movie. He couldn't get any of the rights because they'd all been purchased by other directors. And she said, like, well, I've got this manuscript. And she let him read it, and he got it from her and adapted it into a film. Changed it considerably, but Dennis Hopper actually plays Tom Ripley.
All right.
Yeah, the same character. Who was it that played Ripley in Talented Mr.
Was it Woody Harrelson? I just...
What?
I'm just throwing names out.
No, you know the movie I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. Matt Damon was in that movie, right? Did he play?
Yeah, I think
him?
It was Matt Damon. Yeah, he played Tom Ripley in the new one. And yeah, Dennis Hopper actually plays that same character. It's a very different interpretation.
It seems like it would be, because also Matt Damon was much younger than probably Dennis Hopper was when he was in this movie, right? Yeah,
I think from what I read or from what I heard in the interviews, because I watched all the features on the disc too. Apparently, Dennis Hopper's version of Ripley is very different from kind of how he's described in the book. It's actually it's closer to, I guess, the way Matt Damon portrayed him in the more recent film. He's kind of a younger guy. He's kind of like a little bit, thinner and more shy. And Dennis Hopper plays it much more eccentric and kind of has like cowboy boots and a cowboy hat on the whole time. Kind of just does his Dennis Hopper thing with it. But yeah, the movie is basically, it's a thriller. It stars Bruno Ganz, the great Bruno Ganz, as basically just a German everyman who gets kind of, because he is mildly rude to Tom Ripley at an art auction. Ripley decides to involve him in this convoluted assassination hit job, essentially. He basically gets him involved in kind of like all of these games of murder, essentially. And he's just this regular guy kind of caught up in this thing where he basically ends up being forced to commit assassinations, and bodies start piling up, and he's just this average guy, caught up in this whole thing. Very Hitchcockian in that sense.
Oh,
nice. And Dennis Hopper is kind of like the completely amoral Tom Ripley, just enjoying, toying with this guy and turning his life into absolute chaos. So it was Wenders' first big breakthrough. Like when this movie came out, this was kind of like how he got the offer to come to America and come to American Zoetrope, and kind of how all the other stuff wound up happening, like Wings of Desire and Paris, Texas. It was because of this movie. It was such a big hit in Europe and in art house cinemas. And I could see why, coming in the late 70s. It's a really great blend of American thriller, which is, very plot driven and let's get to the point and let's have things happen and let's have, a big body count and lots of set pieces. But it's also a mixture, because it's a Wim Wenders movie, of that more European art house sensibility, where it's kind of let moments, kind of sit on screen for a little bit. Let's have some quiet. Let's have some contemplation. Let's let the characters, like we were talking about earlier, let's just have them sit and think and contemplate, and let's give space for asking questions and not state everything too clearly. So it was a really interesting mix in that sense, that it's this very, Hitchcockian sort of thriller plot, but done, in Wenders' more kind of art house sort of way. But I enjoyed it quite a bit. Bruno Ganz is great, obviously. Dennis Hopper is great. There's a lot of cameos from other filmmakers, like Nicholas Ray has a cameo. Sam Fuller has a cameo.
Yeah, I think that's most of what I know from the movie. Is I think I was watching just something on Wim Wenders, and when it was talking about The American Friend, it just showed their cameos. Because isn't that when Samuel Fuller's in the movie, or maybe I'm thinking of something else. But when Samuel Fuller's in a movie, he's just like sit like against the wall with a cigar. Or am I thinking of like some Godard movie where
that might actually be a Godard film?
Okay, so maybe I'm confused. Maybe I'm confusing that. But I remember hearing that Samuel Fuller was in that and like had cameos and stuff.
Yeah, Wenders actually did that quite a bit, like cast other directors and like acting roles in his stuff. I always enjoy seeing directors in acting roles. I'm always surprised by like how many directors can actually act. Like Nicholas Ray especially is like really good in the movie.
Or like Truffaut in Close Encounters.
Oh God, yeah, he was great in that.
Or what's his name in Wild Strawberries?
Oh yeah, Phantom Carriage guy, like Victor Sjöström.
Something like that.
Victor.
yeah. The Phantom Carriage guy is his name.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's always great to see directors in roles. Or like Spike Jonze will make appearances and stuff, like in Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah. So that was one of my favorite things about the movie, was just seeing the directors pop up. It's like, oh, hey, that guy. And then they start acting. It's like, damn, he's good.
Yeah. Or even like Rob Reiner, also in Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh,
he's
yeah.
hilarious in that movie. I guess he started out as an actor, but still, like, it is funny.
It seems like he hasn't done it for a while.
Yeah. Or all the director cameos in the Muse. You know?
Oh God, yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's
Albert Brooks, nice.
Hell yeah,
got to give him a shout out.
Oh, always. Any chance you get, you got to give Albert Brooks a shout out.
Yeah, still underrated to this day, Albert Brooks.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. But yeah, I'm glad that it's a good movie, because it's one of those you hear, or at least I've heard a lot about, and I've only seen a couple of Wenders movies. I think I've only seen Paris, Texas, and Wings of Desire.
Oh, that's all?
I think so.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Do you own any of his other movies on Blu-ray? Like, because Criterion's put out a couple. Yeah,
I just have those two movies, and that's how I saw
it. Okay. Yeah, I'd recommend checking out American Friend. I think it's worth a look.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of great things about that, and great things about Kings of the Road.
Yeah, I haven't seen. Oh, I think I saw Alice in the Cities a while ago. I think that's the only road trilogy film I've seen. But definitely I think American Friend is worth picking up the Blu-ray for. I think we're still in July right now, so Barnes & Noble is still having their 50% off sale for anyone watching.
Yeah, there's a free plug for them right there.
Yeah,
I want to get stuff, and I can't. I have to avoid Barnes & Noble at all costs. Like, I'm not letting myself go on their website even, and it's a shame, but it's the smart thing to do.
Yeah. I spent a couple of years like that, so I can relate. But to anyone who does have an extra $20 and they're looking for something to buy, I think American Friend is definitely worth purchasing on Blu-ray, because the transfer looks amazing, and Robbie Muller's cinematography in this film is fan-freaking-tastic. And Muller just passed away this year, a couple months ago. Very sad. He was a Dutch cinematographer, shot some of the most beautiful movies ever. He shot Breaking the Waves. He shot Paris, Texas. He shot several movies for Jim Jarmusch, Dead Man, Down by Law. Amazing cinematographer. Some of his finest work in The American Friend. Really makes prominent use of kind of one of his pioneering techniques, which was multiple color temperatures, because different kinds of light have different temperatures, so they register as different colors on film. So like if a certain light is, I've forgotten the exact science behind this, but basically a certain light of a certain temperature is going to appear like green, for instance, on film. Another light of another temperature is going to appear orange. Sunlight appears blue unless you balance the image in a certain way. And typically, the way films are shot, you just kind of want to balance everything out so that it looks the same. Like kind of like this, everything just looks white.
Yeah.
I think I've pretty much only got an LED on right now, but there's a little bit of sunlight, but those lights are different colors. And one of Muller's like pioneering techniques is he would just kind of like use what was on the locations, because he was shooting with Wim Wenders, low budget. They don't really build any sets. And so he's just kind of using what is there. So he would use like sunlight and tungsten light and fluorescent light, and he would mix blue and orange and green and red and just whatever was there. And American Friend has a lot of scenes like that, you know, just with a lot of like green fluorescence or a lot of blue or a lot of red, and it looks gorgeous, especially on Blu-ray. It's some of his best work. Like, it's just so cool to look at. I'd love to shoot a movie like that.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I mean, you know, right now it would only be $20. It's not that big. You know what's funny, actually? The other night I was at work and I was changing the trash cans. And I pulled this big trash can out, and sitting perfectly on top of all this garbage, as if someone had placed it there for me, was a $20 bill.
Oh, nice.
Like, yeah, I used that to pay my cell phone, but I think I could actually use that to buy the American Friend.
Just pretend like, well, you know, cell phone's a given.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of it. It's like I had the money to pay for my cell phone anyway. So it's like, if I buy a movie, it's not like I'm going to be set back at all.
I would say I don't want to get you to spend money you shouldn't be spending, but I would say it's worth that $20.
I'll remember that. There's like a week left, so I have a week to try to talk myself out of it.
Yeah, we'll see what you end up doing.
Oh man, yeah.
So, closing out the episode, was there anything else you wanted to bring up? Another one you wanted to mention?
I think I'll save it for the next time because it's one I have quite a bit to say, and I know we already gone on for a little while. But so yeah, I think I'm good on my end. I don't know if there's something else you wanted to throw in.
I think usually we close out by saying like kind of what our plans are as far as like what we're gonna watch next. So do you have any like plans? Like, you go into the theater, see anything fairly soon? Oh, yes. Okay.
Mission Impossible, my dude.
Oh, okay.
Oh man, I'm excited for that. I mean, you know me, I love Mission Impossible.
You are a big fan of that franchise.
Yeah, Mission Impossible, it's kind of a story for another time, but Mission Impossible is kind of the thing that got me into movies. And
really?
Yeah. So like, I'm a big fan, obviously, and the movies are also just really good. And this one's gotten great reviews. I'm trying to keep my expectations like in check, but it's gotten amazing reviews, even from like directors. I think I saw something that some filmmaker was like, "Yeah, dude, this movie's the tits." So I'm really excited to see it, and it comes out in a couple days. And I wouldn't be surprised if I see it like a couple times by the next time we go. Because Ghost Protocol I saw a couple times in theaters. And Rogue Nation I saw 3 times in theaters.
Wow.
So, yeah. And it was funny. I took my 10-year-old niece with me 2 of the times. And she loved it. She thought it was great both times. She was excited to see it the second time. So I was talking to her the other day. I was like, "Are we going to go see Mission Impossible Fallout?" She's like, "Yeah, we are."
You said it hasn't opened yet? It opens in the next couple of days?
Yeah, it's I forget, what is it, the 25th today?
Yeah.
Or no, I don't know. I think it opens, if not this Thursday, then this Friday. It's by the weekend it'll be out. So
okay, I see. So you will have seen it by the time we do the next episode.
I definitely will. Like, I'm pretty stoked for it. Even more stoked than I was for the Meg.
Oh god! Did you end up seeing that one?
No, I don't know if it's out yet, and I don't think I'm gonna go see it. I'll wait for that one to come on to Netflix. But
okay.
What about you? What are you gonna see?
I'm gonna try and watch a couple more of my Criterions at some point. We'll see if I've watched any by then. I don't think over this next week, I don't think there's really anything in theaters or coming to theaters that I'm all that stoked for. I don't know if I will have seen any theatrical films by the next episode. There are a couple coming up that I am getting excited for. The new Gus Van Sant film, I think I will go out and see, which is Don't Worry, He Won't Get Far on Foot, which stars Joaquin Phoenix, who's been getting great reviews. The movie itself has been getting really terrific reviews. So I'm interested in that one. I think I'll definitely go see that one. I'm a big Gus Van Sant fan. And then the other one after that, the only other one I can think of coming up that I've got my eye on, I believe it's August 10th. Spike Lee's Black Klansman opens.
Yeah, I want to. Is that how you say it? Is Black Klansman? Because I've been saying it like Black K Klansman.
No, it's just Black Klansman. It's a stylized spelling, but it's Black Klansman.
All right, yeah, I've seen some trailers for that. There's actually a trailer for that played before I saw Hereditary, and was the first. Yeah, that was the first time I saw the trailer for it. It looks really good.
It looks excellent. Yeah, I'm really excited for that one.
Yeah, the trailer I saw made it look like I don't want to say it made it look like a heist movie, but it made it look kind of like an action movie. There's like a lot of like cars drifting and stuff. And I was like, this seems like, I don't know. The description I read online didn't make the movie seem like this, but either way, it's Spike Lee, so I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I was not expecting. I remember the first time I saw the trailer, I was not expecting it to be that funny, because it's like, especially the current point that we're at right now, like culturally, it's like there's a lot of touchy issues related to race, and to see or to hear like a description of that movie, that it's about like one of the first black detectives in this police precinct in this kind of like small town, who like actually infiltrates the Ku Klux Klan. You hear that and you think like, oh my God, that's going to be like a pretty charged movie. That's going to have some like heavy stuff to say. And I'm sure it does. Like Spike Lee always balances serious issues, but in a very entertaining way. And I think that was the thing that really surprised me, which I guess it shouldn't, because it's Spike Lee and he does that so well.
Yeah, I was going to say like Do the Right Thing is just, it's an entertaining movie. And
a very funny movie.
Yeah, it's weird to describe that kind of movie just because of how powerful it is. Like in a way, like, it's entertaining, it's colorful, but it is. And
it's also hard hitting and has some real stuff it wants to say.
Yeah, it's amazing he's able to balance that. Like it shows how good of a filmmaker and a writer that dude is.
Yeah, but I think especially seeing the trailer for Black Klansman, I was like, that looks really fun. And I never thought I would be saying that about a movie called Black Klansman, but that looks really fun. And it seems like he couldn't have picked a better time to tell a story like that.
Yeah, for sure. His movies are always very timely, I guess, and very poignant. Like they hit you deep. Even ones of his that I'm not that big a fan of, like, still resonate with me a lot. Like Bamboozled. Because like Bamboozled, I think is kind of maybe it's like a sloppy sort of movie, but there's a ton of moments in that movie that like are dark, and you feel it.
Yeah. Makes you actually start thinking about things like, oh my God, never saw it that way before.
Yeah, for sure. And from the trailer of this, like it looks like this movie's going to be like really energetic and really well shot and made, and so it's going to be another intense experience. So you're going to have to be ready for that. Prepare yourself emotionally a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to have a lot to say, but yeah, it looks like Spike Lee has chosen to state his message in the most entertaining way possible.
Yeah, that's kind of what he did with Chirac. Like, that's how that whole movie is. Like, it's all done like in rhymes and stuff, and you have like Samuel L. Jackson like pausing the movie sometimes to come on and just have a quick moment, like breaking the fourth wall. It's a very entertaining movie, but you're gonna bawl your eyes out the whole time.
Because it's also about very heavy issues, and about violence and gun culture and all those things.
Oh yeah, that's an intense movie, man.
Yeah, but I'm really excited for that one. I think I'll definitely go out for the theaters for that one. And yeah, other than that, I'm not as keen on the Mission Impossible movies as you are, so I don't know if that showed up on camera, but Bretflix did flip me off. Let it be known. We now have an online beef.
Yeah. We'll duke it out later.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know what I'll have coming up next week, but I'm sure you'll have a lot to say about Mission Impossible.
Yeah. If whether I love it or whether I hate it, which I mean that would probably make me a fanboy, I guess. And I was just kind of saying how much I hate that, but
yeah. When Ethan Hunt gets on the helicopter, Ethan Hunt would never do that.
He did in the first one, but like that's different because he had to put the gum on the thing and make it explode. He didn't do that this time. It's stupid. So I'll be going to see that. I have some videos I'm actually working on. I have a couple I've already shot.
Oh, nice.
Yes, I have one it's already edited. And all I have to do is just finish working on the thumbnail, and I'm going to post that. So hopefully by like tomorrow it'll be up, and then I have another one I'll have up again in a few days. And I'm considering expanding my channel a little bit. I'm actually thinking about talking about video games as well.
Oh, cool.
Because I play a shitload of Monster Hunter, and like there's a lot going on in the Monster Hunter community. Like they're doing the PC port of the new game, and they're about to localize another game that's only in Japan. So I'm like, oh, maybe it's a good time to give my thoughts on the Monster Hunter series. So maybe in the future fans of me can look forward to me commenting on some video games. Who knows? We'll see how I feel.
I think you should. Like, that's my feeling is, you shouldn't try to put yourself in a box and be like, no, I only talk about these things. Like, my philosophy is you should just talk about the things that interest you and the things that you want to talk about,
Yeah, for sure. So I'm thinking I might want to do that. Maybe I'll talk about music and other videos as well.
Yeah, hell yeah.
So I'm trying to think of ways to expand my channel a little bit. So we'll see. You probably won't see much of that in the next week, but maybe in the future.
Okay, yeah. I'm actually working on a video too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've just been finding it hard to like really stay focused on unmade masterpieces. I've been trying to get back into that. I'm still, doing work on a new episode, but it's been kind of inconsistent. And I just haven't been able to like work up the motivation to really actively put the work into it all that often. But I actually started working on something else that I have been getting really excited for that will probably end up being the next video I post. But I for some reason, like, it just popped into my head a little while ago to start doing like top 5 lists or I done like a couple. Like, that's, I think, still my most popular video is the one I did, like top 5 films with unsimulated sex.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It has like 100,000 views or something.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm not really seeing anything for it, but it's getting views.
Yeah. Can you even monetize that? I don't even know if you could.
I played it safe and I didn't monetize it. So, yeah, I haven't made a cent off of that video.
Yeah. Well, it's still great exposure.
Yeah, true. But I was just like going through my stuff, and I saw like I prepared like a bunch of other top 5 lists of like, oh, I'd like to do a top 5 list about this and about these movies, like just stuff I wanted to talk about. And I kind of prepared lists, but I never wrote anything for them. And I was just going through that stuff, and I was just like, what about a director? And I was actually watching a Ridley Scott movie at the time.
Nice.
So like, what about like top 5 Ridley Scott movies? And I just started writing something, and I started enjoying it. I started really having fun writing it. And I wound up nearly writing a complete thing for top 5 Ridley Scott movies. So
give me your number 5 pick right now.
Just number 5? Okay.
Yeah, I'll wait for the whole video, but tease me with your number 5 pick.
Okay. The Duelists.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's an interesting choice. All right.
Yeah.
I have not seen that movie, so I don't really know, but it's not one you hear a whole lot of people talk about. I figured you would most people would just be like Gladiator, Alien, American Gangster, which those are like awesome movies, but
yeah.
Cool.
Aliens, Terminator 2, Jurassic Park.
The Blade Runner 2049. That was my favorite Ridley Scott movie.
But yeah, it was just one I started working on spur of the moment, and I wound up really enjoying it. And I think I might actually start trying to put stuff like that out for a little while, just because it's what I'm actually enjoying doing right now, of just like focusing on a director, watching my favorite movies of theirs, and then just writing some thoughts down,
Mm-hmm.
And just happened to be Ridley Scott. And I started watching some other Ridley Scott movies. It's like, yeah, I could do this. I could totally do this. So I'm working on that one. And I think I want to do one on Paul Thomas Anderson next. So I've gotten excited about these. So look forward to those. And I'll try to keep it going on unmade masterpieces as well.
Yeah, top fives are always a lot of fun. Like I did several of those. I was doing my top 5 favorite movies of the decades, and I think I started with the 50s, and was moving up.
Oh, nice.
Yes, I haven't done one in a very, very long time. I think the last one I did was the 90s. It's just, it's just hard because I don't really have like editing software really and stuff for mine. But I always like wanted to finish that. I mean, I have like one more decade to go, really. Like I got to do the 2010s, and then this or the 2000s, and this decade, the 2010s isn't even over, so I don't have to worry about that for a few years.
Yeah. They are actually fun. Yeah, they are actually fun to do. I don't believe in like definitive rankings, and like I even try to say in every top 5 list I do, like these are just 5 choices. It's not meant to be like the alpha and omega. These are just 5 films I wanted to talk about. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard like with directors, because they make a lot of movies, so your opinions are going to vary. The only one I would like definitively say is like the best of the best. Like I could probably do like a definitive like Charles Laughton directing like list.
the one.
Yeah, but other than that, I can't really think of like a director where I could do a definitive list.
Yeah. I just like talking about filmmakers, right, and how their style changes over movies, and how they, did a certain movie and how that compares with other movies. And yeah, I just found myself really enjoying it, saying like for doing the entry on The Duelists, saying like this is it was Ridley Scott's first movie, so I kind of talk about that. Here's where he started out. He kind of would change in this way, but here's what makes this film brilliant. And then some other movies kind of came later in his career that I'll be talking about on the list, and I'll say like this is kind of how he ended up here. And like I just love thinking about that, how a director's style evolves, but also the things that remain consistent all throughout that, the obsessions that return over and over again. Looks like your video dropped out.
Yeah, it's prompting me that my battery is dying. So
oh, okay, we better close it out then.
Yeah. So yeah, this was probably our longest episode yet. I think we may have exceeded 2 hours.
We might have. I lost track. I'm gonna have to start timing them, like remembering to time them, starting with the next one.
Yeah, this episode makes a trilogy of episodes, and the third in the trilogy is always the most epic. So
yeah,
it makes sense.
Now we got to do the next trilogy.
Yeah, the sequel trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Or we can start with prequels. Who cares?
Yeah, that'll be the next one. Yeah, episode -1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Super Celluloid Bros, thanks everyone for watching. I've been Disregarding Henry.
I've been Bretflix Mazursky.
So yeah, subscribe, watch videos, like, comment, do what you do.
Do it all. Don't do any of it, whatever you feel like, but please do.
Yeah. And see you next Wednesday.
See you next Wednesday.